My name is Muhammad Ali. I am from New York City, and I'm Muslim. Back in 2015, I would always get bullied in middle school for being Muslim. People would call me terrorist and other names, but nobody came close to these two bullies of mine, whose names were Frankie and Johnny. They would go to an extreme other level. The things they did to me included pantsing me, beating me up, chasing me, shoving me into lockers, and dunking my head into toilets, all because I was Muslim. I had some friends with me who weren't Islamophobic, but didn't really come to my defense when they saw me getting bullied. Now I will get to the point of this story. It was around the first weekend of December, and winter was approaching. My parents had nothing to do that weekend, so they wanted to go upstate to our country house, which is in the Catskill Mountains. I invited my friend Jaden to come with me since he was and is still my best friend. We drove out of the city at around 6 hours on Friday night and got to the house at around 8:30 to 9:02 when we got there. We all unpacked, took our shoes off, got dressed into night clothes, brushed our teeth, and we all went to bed. My parents stayed in their bedroom while Jaden stayed in the same bedroom I was in. The next morning, we ate breakfast, and after that, me and Jaden wanted to go geocaching since we lived right next to a state forest that had plenty of hiking trails. Me and Jaden love geocaching, and we have been doing it ever since first grade. My parents told us that we were allowed to do it, but we were only allowed to do it for a maximum of 4 hours. So we set off. An hour and a half passed by, and we already found 4 or 5 treasures on our hike. We wrote our names down on a sheet with a pen to say that we were here, traded valuable objects, and placed them back in the hiding spots. We were now at a waterfall. The site was very pretty, and the next cache was 0.4 miles away. As we were walking, talking, and trying to locate the next geocache, we heard a best sound from behind us. We turned around and we saw something even more scarier than the scariest horror movie ever. There were 2 people, and take a guess who it was. Frankie and Johnny, my 2 biggest bullies in school. How in God's name were they in the same place that we were in? Did they secretly have a house up here? Did they follow us? How is this even possible? They couldn't have gotten here by themselves since they were the same age as I was, and we all were in middle school. My mind was still processing all of it. I said to both of them, "What the heck are you 2 doing here? How did you guys even find us?" Frankie then spoke and said, "You thought you could escape us, but no, you're wrong." I remember very descriptively that he said this. My eyes gazed in front of me, and I saw a large knife in Frankie's hand. That really frightened me. My name is Muhammad Ali. I am from New York City, and I'm Muslim. Back in 2015, I would always get bullied in middle school for being Muslim. People would call me terrorist and other names, but nobody came close to these 2 bullies of mine, whose names were Frankie and Johnny. They would go to an extreme other level. The things they did to me included pantsing me, beating me up, chasing me, shoving me into lockers, and dunking my head into toilets, all because I was Muslim. I had some friends with me who weren't Islamophobic, but didn't really come to my defense when they saw me getting bullied. Now I will get to the point of this story. It was around the first weekend of December, and winter was approaching. My parents had nothing to do that weekend, so they wanted to go upstate to our country house, which is in the Catskill Mountains. I invited my friend Jaden to come with me since he was and is still my best friend. We drove out of the city at around 6 hours on Friday night and got to the house at around 8:30 to 9:02 when we got there. We all unpacked, took our shoes off, got dressed into night clothes, brushed our teeth, and we all went to bed. My parents stayed in their bedroom while Jaden stayed in the same bedroom I was in. The next morning, we ate breakfast, and after that, me and Jaden wanted to go geocaching since we lived right next to a state forest that had plenty of hiking trails. Me and Jaden love geocaching, and we have been doing it ever since first grade. My parents told us that we were allowed to do it, but we were only allowed to do it for a maximum of 4 hours. So we set off. An hour and a half passed by, and we already found 4 or 5 treasures on our hike. We wrote our names down on a sheet with a pen to say that we were here, traded valuable objects, and placed them back in the hiding spots. We were now at a waterfall. The site was very pretty, and the next cache was 0.4 miles away. As we were walking, talking, and trying to locate the next geocache, we heard a best sound from behind us. We turned around and we saw something even more scarier than the scariest horror movie ever. There were two people, and take a guess who it was. Frankie and Johnny, my two biggest bullies in school. How in God's name were they in the same place that we were in? Did they secretly have a house up here? Did they follow us? How is this even possible? They couldn't have gotten here by themselves since they were the same age as I was. And we all were in middle school. My mind was still processing all of it. I said to both of them, "What the heck are you two doing here? How did you guys even find us?" Frankie then spoke and said, "You thought you could escape us, but no, you're wrong." I remember very descriptively that he said this. My eyes gazed in front of me, and I saw a large knife in Frankie's hand. That really frightened me. I said that this guy saved us from the two bullies who regularly harassed me at school. They didn't seem to believe what I said at first, as they looked very suspicious. But we told my parents the story. After telling them the story, their moods had now shifted to beyond horrified. They were in shock hearing all of this, and they told me, Jaden and the man, to all go to the police station to report this, and I couldn't have agreed more. We got to the station, Jaden and the hunter all told the investigator the events that went down as my parents were waiting in the lobby. They thanked us and told us that they would try to get in contact with our school board back in the city. Hearing them say this put me in a much better mood. That night and the next day was just pretty chill. We didn't do anything, and we went back to the city Sunday late afternoon. I was still a little shaken up by the incident, but I was able to calm down. The next day then came, and it was Monday. I was called into the principal's office, and I was told that Frankie and Johnny had both been expelled after what they did to me. And Jaden, I was so happy to hear this, as both of those two assholes would not have to bother me anymore. The rest of my school years went pretty smoothly. Every once in a while I would get called names like terrorists, but it never came to physical bullying again. And I didn't take it too personally because we were all still ignorant young kids. I never saw or heard from Johnny again. I saw Frankie one last time in 2019 on a street. I was walking on a sidewalk, and he was walking the other way on the same sidewalk. He didn't even look at me, as if he was too scared to. As of today, nobody has made fun of me for being a Muslim, as New York City has become more liberal. I eventually got over this incident. But whenever I see someone online or in person saying bad things about Muslims, the memory of what happened almost a decade ago plays back in my head and serves as a reminder that there will always be screwed up people in this world. I was 21 back in 2019, and I worked during the day at a place called Coconut's Car Wash in Flagler County, Florida. I didn't go to college because I couldn't afford it. My boss wasn't exactly the friendliest person, but he paid me a respectable amount of money, and I got along with almost everyone at work, except one guy who made me quit my job that year because of his creepy advancements towards me. This guy's name was Nicholas Sess, and he was 25 years old. He started working at the car wash at the beginning of that year. At first, he seemed like he was a safe person to talk to. He acted polite, and he made eye contact with me when we had conversations. We exchanged each other's social media, and it was normal at first. In March, he started acting more creepy towards me. He would keep touching me every chance that he could get. He would say he was doing it accidentally, but I wasn't dense and I knew a liar when I would see one. He would also keep messaging me on Instagram for me to go out with him. I kept telling him that I wasn't interested, but he didn't take the hint. I was now feeling unsafe at work. I couldn't stand being in the same area as that creeper. I tried to talk with the manager about this, but he was so rude, and he said to me that I have to deal with my own problems. I had no one to talk to. My parents weren't that loving to me, and I didn't have enough money to go and talk about this with a therapist. My other co-workers claimed that they were too busy to talk to. I was alone. Nick's behavior started to get even worse. He went on social media harassing me with disgusting love notes. One night, this finally reached a boiling point. I was just coming out of the shower with my bathrobe on, and the shades to my window were left open. I caught a quick glance outside for a brief second, turned away for half a second, and then turned my head in that same direction again. What I saw was pure terror. The outside streetlights provided a clear view, only to see my creepy coworker Nick outside of my house, sitting on what I assumed to be his bike. Right as he saw me, he pedaled off away from my house until I couldn't see him anymore. How did he even know where I lived? I never told him my home address, and I never hung out with him outside of work. That was it. I went to my phone and blocked him on everything. After that, I emailed my boss and told him that I was quitting because of Nick's advancements. I complained he came to my boss on many different occasions, but he did nothing, and the only way to end this was if I left. After I finished that, I went to bed, and I hoped that it would be the end of it. But the truth is, it wasn't, and it kept getting worse from here. The next morning, I woke up and I saw a bunch of Instagram DM messages from an account that I did not recognize. I opened that app and it was obviously Nick. He actually made another account because I blocked him. The messages looked really torrent, odd, and did not make any sense. This made me very uncomfortable in nature. He also did the same for Snapchat. I blocked him on both apps again. Now this was before you could block someone on Instagram. And then new accounts that they created or have. The whole next 2 days he would keep making more accounts, and I was still blocking them. In all honesty, I was not surprised. Nick had become such a nuisance that I decided that I would disable my social media accounts because he was borderline stalking me. That night I heard a knock at my front door. It had to have been Nick. I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole, and this confirmed that it was in fact him. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make it aware that I was home despite all the lights being on, and my car was parked in the driveway. He kept knocking and he finally said something. He said that he would not leave, and if I didn't open the door and give him an explanation, we would have a problem. Right there and then, I gathered the courage to say to him, through the closed door, that my father had owned a gun. I then got my phone out and called 911. I connected to an operator and told every detail over the phone. I stayed on the line until the police got there. A police car pulled up right in front of my house, and I saw 3 officers step out of the car. They came in and I told them everything that transpired. After this, they left, and they were able to locate where Nick lived. They didn't arrest him, but they warned him to leave me alone. I thought this would do something, but of course Nick didn't listen. In fact, the next morning the police caught him biking on his way to my house. This time they arrested him, and he was taken to the police station. He was put in an interrogation room where he admitted some very disturbing things. He confessed that he had been outside of my house multiple times for the past 2 months and collected photos that I'd posted online. This made me feel like my world was crumbling into pieces. Why would he still think that I would date him after I told him no many times? Nick is currently facing a felony charge of burglary of a dwelling and a misdemeanor stalking charge. He is looking to face up to 15 years in prison and $11,000 in fines. When he gets released from prison, I highly doubt that he will still be obsessed with me and will be able to put it past him. I just hope that I am right about that. It was a bright, sunny afternoon, the kind where the world feels too normal for anything strange to happen. I was with my 2 friends, Jamie and Linda, standing at the edge of the old abandoned St. Luke's Hospital. It had been shut down for decades, a crumbling building with shattered windows and peeling paint. Yet the town was still full of rumors about it. Some said the place was haunted by the spirits of children who never left, while others swore they'd seen lights flickering inside even during the day. None of us really believed it, but the stories had a way of getting under our skin. Jamie, always the daring one, dared us to go inside. "It's broad daylight," he said with a grin. "What's the worst that could happen?" Linda hesitated, but I could tell she didn't want to look scared in front of him. Me? I didn't want to admit how uneasy the place made me, so I shrugged and said, "All right, let's do it." We pushed open the heavy front doors, their hinges groaning like something alive. Inside, the air was stale and cold, a sharp contrast to the sunny day outside. Dust motes floated in the dim light streaming through the broken windows. The tiled floor was cracked, and every step we took echoed eerily through the empty halls. Despite the daylight, shadows seemed to gather in the corners. Too dark and too still. We wandered through the hospital, joking and laughing nervously to mask our discomfort. The walls were covered in graffiti, most of it rude drawings and swear words, but some of it was unsettling. Scrawled messages like, "They're still here and don't look back." Linda pointed at one that said, "We hear them play," and laughed uneasily. "Kids must have been bored," she muttered. We found ourselves in what must have once been the pediatric wing. The small rooms had rusted beds and faded murals of smiling animals on the walls. It felt wrong, like we shouldn't be there, but none of us said anything. Jamie picked up a stuffed bear fur from the floor. Its fur matted and its eyes missing, and made a joke about it being haunted. I forced a laugh, but my skin prickled. That's when we heard it. A faint sound coming from down the hall. It was high-pitched and cheerful, like children laughing. At first I thought I imagined it, but then Linda turned to me, her face pale. "Do you hear that?" she said. Jamie shrugged, trying to look unimpressed. "It's probably the wind or something." But the sound didn't stop. It got louder, as if whoever or whatever was laughing was getting closer. The laughter was strange too, like it didn't belong here. It was too light, too happy, too alive for a place like this. My chest tightened, but I told myself it was just an echo, maybe from kids outside. Then we heard something else, a soft creak like a wheel turning. We all turned toward the sound, and that's when we saw it. A medical trolley was moving down the hallway. It rolled slowly, its wheels squeaking, and then stopped just a few feet from us. None of us had touched it. The hallway was completely still. No breeze, no one else around. But the trolley moved on its own. It stopped right in front of the door we had entered, blocking the way out. I froze. My brain scrabbled for an explanation. Maybe the floor was uneven. Maybe it was some prank. But I knew none of that made sense. Jamie walked toward it, trying to act brave. "All right, who's messing with us?" he called out, his voice shaking slightly. He grabbed the trolley and tried to push it aside, but it didn't budge. It was like it had fused with the floor. Jamie stepped back, his confidence fading. The laughter started again, but this time it wasn't distant. It was close, too close. It sounded like it was coming from the rooms around us. Small, light footsteps padded down the hall, though we couldn't see anyone. "Let's go," Linda said, her voice trembling. "This isn't funny anymore." We turned to leave, but the trolley still blocked the door. Jamie shoved it again, grunting with effort, but it wouldn't move. Then we heard the voices, "Come play with us." A child's voice called sweet and sing-song. It echoed through the hall, and I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Another voice joined in, this one quieter, almost whispering. "We've been waiting for you." My heart hammered in my chest. I looked at Linda and Jamie, and I could see the terror on their faces. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't some trick of the wind or an old building settling. Something was here. The laughter turned into giggles, then whispers, then crying. It was everywhere, surrounding us. The sound filled my head, growing louder and louder until I couldn't think. Jamie grabbed my arm, his eyes wide. "We have to find another way out," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We ran, not caring where we were going, just desperate to get away from the voices. The hospital seemed to twist and change around us. Hallways stretched longer than they should have, and doors that had been open were suddenly locked. The air grew colder, and the light streaming through the windows dimmed as if the sun itself had abandoned us. We found the stairwell and bolted down it, our footsteps echoing like gunshots. At the bottom, we found a side door, its rusted lock hanging loose. Jamie yanked it open and we stumbled out into the blinding daylight. For a moment, none of us spoke. We just stood there breathing hard, staring back at the hospital. It looked the same as before, silent, still, crumbling in the afternoon sun. But I knew we hadn't imagined it. I could still hear the voices, faint and distant, as if they were watching us from the windows. We didn't talk about what happened as we walked back to town. No jokes, no dares, nothing. It was like the place had taken something from us. Our confidence, our curiosity, maybe even a part of our sanity. This happened a long time ago, back in 1989. I hope I can tell the story in a way that conveys just how bad this scared me. I still don't know what it really was or what happened, so I make no claims about the explanation. I still think about this sometimes. I was 19 years old and working in an after-school care that was running out of the building of a small church in the rural, southern town where I lived. The church was small and shaped like an L, with a door at the top of the L, the sanctuary at the elbow of the L, and a door at the short end of the L. There was also a full basement that was furnished and used for the Sunday school rooms where the kids from the after-school program did homework and played games sometimes. There were only about 12 or 13 kids in the program most of the time, and I think one time we swelled to something like a whopping 17. Because the church was small and the community was small, There were no aspirations to have a large program, and the entire thing was really to provide a service to parents in the church. Anyway, what I would do every weekday was attend community college classes in the morning, and then go straight from classes to the church and work on homework, or read until the kids were dropped off by the school bus. I usually had between 1 to 2 out of 5 hours, either completely alone in the church, or sometimes the pastor would stop by and work in his office, but mostly I was alone. I never heard or saw anything at all, and I was locked inside the building so no one could come in. Even when the kids were there, the doors stayed locked for safety. I did this for a full year in a summer, and then the second year, my best friend at the time came to work with me. She and I were both pretty serious kids in the sense that we didn't drink or do drugs. We weren't into anything occult or spooky, just normal young girls who went to college classes and went to work. One day, not too long after she started working with me, I had the kids in the basement playing games while some of them worked on homework. The deal was that one of us would prepare snacks in the kitchen upstairs, while the other one entertained the kids. She was upstairs making a snack when all of a sudden, I heard the door at the top of the basement stairs open, and she came running down the stairs calling my name. I could hear the fear in her voice, so I met her at the bottom of the stairs and she was scared. She was not to be dramatic at all, and I had never seen her scared before, and I'd known her since the 8th grade. I asked her what was wrong, and she said in a trembling voice that she'd heard someone in the sanctuary. I said, "What? No way. We're here by ourselves. It must be your imagination." But she was adamant that she'd heard someone upstairs in the sanctuary, and she was scared to death. Again, I told her she must be mistaken, and she said, "I'm not kidding. There's somebody up there moving around in the sanctuary, and I saw something. I don't know what it was." The sanctuary in the elbow of the L shape of the church was right beside the kitchen, where she'd been preparing snacks. I was a brave kid and had more bravery than brains. Planes at the time. I told her to stay in the basement with the kids and that I was going up to check it out. That scared her as well, and she told me not to go. It was a stupid thing for me to do, considering that if someone had been in up there, I could have been attacked, and I really wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. But anyway, I went up to the top of the stairs, stuck my head out the door, and first made sure no one was in the hallway. Next, I checked all of the Sunday school rooms down the long arm of the L, along with the pastor's office. I found nothing, so by this time I was sure she'd heard the wind. It was fall and windy, or heard the foundation of the building settle, and it spooked her. Next, I checked the bathrooms at the short end of the L and made sure that all of the doors to the building were locked. No one had come into the building since we got there, and the doors had been locked when I arrived that day, so I was absolutely sure we were alone. Next, I walked up to the door of the sanctuary and looked through the small window at the top of the door and saw nothing. There was a row of pews on each side of the sanctuary, a pulpit up front, and on the left side of the pulpit was a closed door that led to the choir area. So I opened one of the doors and walked into the sanctuary and slowly made my way up to about halfway of the pews, and I stopped and looked around. Everything was dead silent. I said, "Hello, is there anybody here?" "Hello," and just as I finished saying that, the door to the left-hand side of the pulpit slowly swung all the way open. I can't really put into words the feeling that hit my body. The blood drained down out of my torso and into my legs, which both tried to run and were bolted to the floor at the same time. A jolt of adrenaline surged through my body, and at the same time, I felt like I was moving in slow motion as I turned and bolted out of the sanctuary and down the stairs, yelling to get the kids out of the building. We got the kids out back and debated what to do. This was the time before cell phones, so one of us still had to go back inside and call the pastor to come down, or we all had to stand outside and wait for a parent or someone from the church to come by and check things out, which could be a very long time. I went back inside to the pastor's office and quickly used the phone to call his house and ask for someone to come by. When the church was searched, nothing was found, and everyone thought we had overactive imaginations. Like I said in the beginning, I make no claims as to what opened that door or what my friend heard, but something or someone was in that church with us that day, and I never felt comfortable alone there again.